Oh, live from Empty Cloud. Here we are for Monk Chat.
Yes, and it looks like Rick is here, and Kumu, and Manal, and Susan. Hello to everyone out there.
So welcome to ask your questions if you have any burning Dhamma questions
Yes.
that will attempt to answer to the best of our ability.
Yes, today's Monk Chat, so it's our Q&A night. So if you have any questions regarding the Dhamma, then you can go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll share them on the screen, and we'll try to answer to the best of our ability. So hello to Ram and Chitapala. It takes some time for people to type in
the question.
Yeah. Although some people are really good with their phones, they just slide their finger around, and I can't do that.
The first time I met Ajahn Brahm, he was at a Bayagiri monastery in California. And I was the only one that asked a question. And he said, "Oh, asking questions are really important. You're likely to be reborn as an intelligent being because if you can ask good questions, it's already a sign of intelligence and wanting to learn."
That's very true.
So we're encouraging. Oh, Karuna Monastic Cat Cuddler and Rupal Patel and Louisa.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, go ahead and type them, and we'll try to answer them. We also have Lee that just joined us.
There's some people from the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Jayanta was there, and P. Lee, and here's some questions. Yay.
All right, let's go ahead and show it. Question. I was off from practice for a few months, distracted by work task. This has happened a few times. How can I make sure to practice every day and be mindful and not be stressed out?
Oh, well, I can say a few words about that. Well, one thing is to make the daily practice really accessible to you. And when I was working in the world, I was a nurse, and I actually had to get up pretty early to go to work. And I was instructed I was actually a Tibetan Geshe. He suggested to sit. You don't have to sit a long period of time, but sit daily. He said, sit for 15 or 20 minutes. And he suggested in the morning and in the evening. So you can set aside 15 minutes, I think, twice a day. And if you miss one of them, at least you have the other one. So if you miss the morning sitting, then you really make a determination to sit in the evening. And if you sit in the morning and you miss that evening one, but try to do it like as regularly as possible, both. That's one suggestion. It's just shorter periods. Also, you can incorporate, I don't know what kind of work you are doing. A friend of mine who was an LVN or the LPN told me that he would do walking meditation between patients. He would go from one patient to the next, and then he would bring all his mindfulness and just let go of the last patient, and then walk very mindfully to the next one. And then he was very present with that patient. And actually, because I was doing nursing care too, a lot of the things I could do very mindfully. I was doing some sterile procedures and things like that. And there's anything that you can do during the day that you just really focus all your attention to. Another thing is that it's the mindfulness is body, speech, and mind. So just really bringing mindfulness not only to the physical activity, to really reflect before we speak, that we're speaking kindly, that we're speaking truthfully, we're speaking in a timely manner. There's like this, there's 5 things that you can reflect on. Is it spoken with a heart of loving kindness, and then without any anger or hatred. So you can try and work with your speech when you interact with people. So just integrate the practice into your life, and I think also. Do you have anything to add to that? Is that
I always like to point out to people that as long as they're practicing the 5 precepts and taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, they're practicing. So we shouldn't limit practice to like formal meditation or formal reading of the suttas. Like every time, you practice restraint and not hurting or harming or not giving in to temptations and greed and sexuality. That's the practice. Like I was saying, incorporating it into your everyday, or just listening to chanting, or doing acts of loving kindness, saying hello to people, opening the door for them, helping people, being generous. That's all practice. So it doesn't have to look like formal practice all the time. Actually, formal practice, I think about like training wheels, to help us bring it into life, because we're supposed to bring it into our everyday lives. Like I was saying, try to bring the practice into your everyday life. So maybe you can, incorporate some chanting, or incorporate listening to Dhamma talks while you're commuting, or while you're brushing your teeth, or maybe at work. You can chant inside of your head, and you can just be mindful, as I was saying, going from one place to another, mindfully brushing your teeth, and just being a good person. I mean, just being a good person is a very important part of the practice that gets this put to the side sometimes, that we forget about. But sila is really a foundational aspect of the practice. And as long as you're keeping sila, you're practicing. Okay.
So if we can go to Malini.
Yes.
Right?
It says, Namasagam, Ayas, Suvijana, and Bante. Have either of you spent time in a monastery in a Buddhist country? And if so, how does it compare for you to living in a less traditional monastery of the West?
Yes. I was in Thailand it was a little over 2 months. I was at Nirotaram. That was actually in 2011. And I was a new bhikkhuni, and I didn't know any Thai, but I was fortunate enough to have been in Fremont and spent a lot of time at the Thai temple in Fremont. So I got an idea of the Thai culture ahead of time, which was really fortunate. And then with monastic form, basically you have to just know your place in line. So, but what was really beautiful about being in Thailand is that I had the opportunity to go out with my alms bowl, and there was routes that we would walk, and we would it was like 2 kilometers in one direction, so it's goes a little over a mile in one direction. And so we had to walk barefoot. That was a challenge. And but the people were so wonderful and generous. We'd walk through a very small village, and we'd walk. There was like different streets that we would walk on, and the people knew that that was their street that we'd be on that particular day, so they'd be ready. We walked through the street and then came back, and by the time we came back, there were people coming out with the food to offer into our bowls. So that was quite beautiful experience. Let's see what if that's
go
how
back
does
up.
it compare? Because is that the whole question? Oh,
Yeah, if you either spend time in a monastery in
how
a
does it
Buddhist
compare?
country.
Yeah, the main thing I think is that it's very easy. The people understand what you're doing. That's one of the things. You don't have to explain a lot. It's that's very easeful, and yeah, it was very much. I could just follow into line and just follow the schedule and just I didn't. It didn't matter that I didn't speak Thai. I could just participate. So it's been really inspiring to see the bhikkhunis. There was a Mechi's 8 precept nuns had gradually converted to being bhikkhunis and headed by Pra-Ajanandayani. And just to see that form that you see, I was seeing in the bhikkhus temples, it was just natural for them to respond in ways that with respect for the elders, and I was just very natural. I guess that's another thing. Everything was just coming very naturally.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't this awkward learning curve that the Westerners all have to go through.
I spent a very, very short time in a monastery in Sri Lanka just for my higher ordination and things like that, the ceremonial process for one night. And but the temple I'm from in LA, it's all Asian monks, Asian community, so it's very traditional in that sense. And uh, the emphasis is very much on, kind of like tending to the Asian immigrant community, and helping them and assisting them in their everyday lives. And so it's when I leave that space and I come to spaces like this, there isn't that necessary that kind of emphasis. Right here is kind of more like um, your own personal cultivation, and in the traditional Asian setting, it's very like socially driven, and I mean, the families there become like your families because you're going to their homes and doing blessings and birthdays, and for the SATs, giving blessings for SATs and blessings for cars and blessings for anything that you can imagine, right? And then teaching Dhamma school to the kids. I did that for like 8 years, all the Sri Lankan kids. And so it's very much like you become an uncle or something. That's how I felt. I felt like I was an uncle in the family. And then over here, it's not like that. Over here, or when I go out of those spaces, like when I went to other places like Upaya and Zen centers, it's more emphasis is on practice one's own cultivation. And I felt like in my experience in all the Sri Lankan temples that I've been to, it's very much more engaged with like families, attending to different family needs. This family needs this family needs that. And so those are the ones more like socially engaged, and the other one is kind of more like self-practice engaged. Here we have an interesting question. How can I be free of phone YouTube addiction? I feel anxious and uneasy when away from it sometimes. I barely went on my phone today and felt good though. How can I continue this without stop? Are you on your phone often?
I was anti-phone for a long time, and then I became a traveling monk, and my family was afraid of losing me. So they got me one of those cell phone thingies. That was the first experience with the phone. And now I check the weather a lot.
That's what I do too. I check the weather.
But I think I know it's an addiction. I know well, even for me, it was the computer and wanting to go on a lot and check my emails and things like that. So I think people have a tendency to go to extremes. So one thing to do maybe is to just set times, like to check the phone at certain times, and also limit how you look at it. Just like I can just look and see that there's no phone calls or messages or something like that and say, okay, that's enough, and put it down. The thing with anxiety, if it's yeah, like smoking and a lot of these habits that some people have, um, it's to give ourselves something to do to distract us from that anxiety, this angst that we might be feeling. So looking at that directly, how can I be at ease? What can I do to feel at ease? And I have a tendency sometimes for anxiety, and it's like, what am I going to do in the future? How am I going to solve this problem? What's going to happen? All this kind of stuff. And then if I see myself going in that direction, I say to myself, well, is worrying going to change the future? No. Uh, can I really know what's going to happen? Like no one can know what the future is going to hold, right? So I'm trying to make this plan and solve in my mind the future, and that's impossible. So we can just kind of like go through like, yeah, is there something else I can be doing better with my mind than this? It's often on the cushion, this kind of stuff. The anxiety might be coming up. So just to try to learn ways to become at ease, like, how is my breath right now? How is there tension in my shoulders? How can I bring my body to a sense of ease somehow? Yeah, so finding ways to deal with anxiety directly instead of just distracting oneself is one thing too I would recommend.
Yes, I think it's very important that we take a look not only at the symptoms, like I'm doing this, but what is causing us to do that, like the anxiety, and then see, well, what is provoking the anxiety? Is it like a relationship problem? Is it a work problem? Is it a health problem? Is it an economic problem? And try to directly deal with that instead of covering it up, right? Well, I'm going to cover it up by going on my phone. I'm going to cover it up by using drugs. I'm going to cover it up by etc. So we do need to take some time to be introspective and see where this not only impulse to be on your phone, but where is the anxiety that's driving that impulse coming from, and dealing with that directly instead of just trying to cover it over all the time, like kids, how they hide all their dirty clothes and trash under the bed so their parents don't see it, but the parents find out later, So we can't get away with that anymore. We gotta look under the hood and under the bed and see what's the root cause to our anxiety or to our sadness or our anger or our lustfulness, and deal with that instead of, because if you get rid of the phone, you'll just jump to another object. You could just replace the phone with food, or you can the phone is not the problem, the food is not the problem, but what is driving you towards that, and look at that.
Yeah, and also the if I can do something, let's say there's anxiety because I didn't pay a bill. I'm just pulling something. If I can just say, all right, I'm going to pay that bill now. I have the money in the bank. I just need to do it. Then do it. But if it's like worrying about something that's unsolvable, which is what a lot of anxiety is, like, what's going to happen tomorrow? What am I going to say to my friend? How am I going to solve this problem? Just put that all down. You don't need to run all that in your mind because it's going to always be different. But if there's something you can immediately do, then do it. Or write a note. Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to forget to do this tomorrow that I said I would do, however you can remind yourself, and just set it aside then after you've done that. But most anxiety is just spinning our wheels. And there's a whole thing as if you're in a car and you're in the mud and then you put on the accelerator and you're spinning your wheels. This is what that's like when you're anxious. It's just you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the muck. So just slowing down, looking at the problem carefully. If there's something to do to get yourself out of the mud, then do it. But don't spin your wheels.
I think Manal has a question now. Good evening, Venerables. How can I more readily recall and reflect on the Four Noble Truths every day?
That's a very good question. Well, first noble truth is the truth of suffering, dukkha, right? So that's easy to see. And I think it's a really good reflection too. And what is causing that dukkha if it's arising within ourselves? And to look at the cause. And it's usually because we're wanting something or wanting things to be different than they actually are. So the first two truths are pretty easy to see. I mean, even like all the suffering in the world, I can't solve that. I might feel a lot of dukkha because there's suffering in the world, but that's because I don't want it to be that way. But if I say to myself, this is the nature of the world, that there is this dukkha, I can start looking at it directly. What can I do? Can I do anything about the suffering in the world? Like the big picture. No, I can't. But I can, with this being, at least lessen that dukkha by looking at what the cause is. This is like what Bhante was saying too. Look at the situation carefully and see what's causing it. But so the understanding about the relationship between craving it's wanting and wanting things to be different, not wanting, I sometimes call it. So if I see any kind of unhappiness, irritation, like that, it's what is causing that? It's because I want something. I want things to be different. So you're looking at cause and effect there. So that's pretty easily available. And then complete cessation is take us to arahantship. But I can see if I let go of this craving for things in my life, like if I see that the dukkha arising from a certain amount of craving, and I can set that down, and then I see that in this moment I've let go, and that particular dukkha has ceased, and I'm really seeing the cause and effect there too. So the patipada, the Noble Eightfold Path, certainly you can do the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path in your daily life. I think that's what you're asking about, how.
Yeah, in our everyday life. How can she bring it to mind or recall it?
Yeah, so the sila, our sila, is rooted in the Noble Eightfold Path, if you think about it. So right speech and right action have to do with non-harming. And right intention has to do with our that we aren't thinking harmful thoughts, that we aren't causing harm to ourselves or others. So if we don't have any ill will, thoughts of cruelty, and there's also the thought of craving that we can let go of as much as we can. That's right, our right intention, and that supports our sila. So if we're coming from right intention, then we're less likely to speak falsely or harshly, and we will restrain from harming other beings, not killing. And if we let go of craving, we certainly won't be stealing. I mean, this is keeping those precepts is keeping us on the path. And then if we have this sila purified, then it's going to support our samadhi. And we have to have a certain amount of mindfulness in order to keep the sila and to support the samadhi. And our right effort, this is like scrambled the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a little scrambled here, not quite in right order. Our right effort is abandoning the unwholesome, which is supporting the everything else, and bringing up the wholesome. So it's we don't have to think of the this practice as something separate from our lives, only something that we do on the cushion, like Svante was saying earlier. The sila definitely is a foundational. If we're keeping our sila well, then we're really engaged with the path. So, and then that supports our samadhi, and the right mindfulness is like really key for everything as well.
Yeah, sometimes I find it useful, Aya, just to kind of say it to yourself, so you can kind of like chant it while you're doing regular things like dukkha samudaya nirodha magga, dukkha samudaya nirodha magga, stuff like that. So, or even just like Four Noble Truths, you can break it down into the three marks of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta, and then you also have the Four Noble Truths in mind. So sometimes just kind of like bringing it to mind, kind of have it like a chanting, and then also realizing that everything that you're doing, as I was saying, that our everyday Buddhist practice is an embodiment, a manifestation of trying to be in accordance with the Four Noble Truths, of realizing and understanding the Four Noble Truths. So then, just as I was saying, practicing generosity, practicing sila, practicing meditation, within that system of your every normal day Buddhist life, that is understanding the Four Noble Truths already. So it's not something separate from that. It's just being embodied or explained or held in a different kind of container where it's maybe not so direct.
I think the most direct thing is the dukkha, and the understanding the dukkha and how we cause ourselves dukkha.
Yes. Okay. Ram says, thanks. So true. Thanks a lot for the question. And then we got a two-part or a longer question here from Rick. Venerables, what are skillful means when a new neighbor tries to control me by harming my property and trees? He threatens me with direct harm if I don't give into his abuse and control. And there's another part. Recently, he installed cameras pointed at my property to watch and listen to me and to try to intimidate me. Sometimes I think some of these things have very practical answers where we don't even need the Dhamma. Some of this stuff sounds criminal in nature, what he's doing. So you would want to report that to the police, and if there's like a homeowners association, we don't have to, because we're Buddhists, kind of have this kind of pseudo equanimity where we let ourselves get abused. If, there is a call to action, if something is criminal in nature or harmful, then you have to report it to the proper authorities. So that would be my pragmatic, very kind of like first solution, instead of trying to like do a bypass, right? Like a spiritual bypass. And how can I deal with this psychological part of it? First, let's address the mundane level, and then now we can get into the psychological part. So, Aya, do you have any kind of advice for him dealing with this obnoxious
Yeah.
neighbor?
Well, it does sound over the top. I mean, yeah, like I was saying, it does sound like some of the behavior actually may be um, violation of law. If he's damaging your property
Mhm.
and making threats, um, I would maybe, I don't know if there's some kind of legal advisor that could help you, or you could talk to the sheriff or something. Just describe what's going on, and then what can be done about that. Because sometimes, yeah, I mean, some kind of maybe a report to the police or something like that of what's going on. And certainly, if the person is threatening you, this is um, they may do something what's called a welfare check. Um, and I've heard this where even within families where the it's escalating and it seems like there may be physical abuse or there's verbal abuse going on, and just calling the sheriff in and that just them coming and talking like, okay, this is inappropriate, and just having their presence there, sometimes it does make an impact. Yeah, so I feel a lot of sympathy for you. It sounds like a very difficult situation, and so take really good care of your heart, but do seek help, outside help, seek legal help, because it does sound really over the top what this person is doing.
Mm. Just some stuff maybe going on with Susan's phone or.
Yeah, she's trying to enter something and it's not.
Okay, here we have an interesting question by Hey Ang Ewe. Can we say learning Abhidhamma, cultivating wisdom, and upholding Vinsya, pure compassion?
Maybe it's Vinaya.
Oh, maybe it is.
Uh,
Yeah, so probably like wisdom, panya, and vinaya, right? Like,
can we say that they are pure compassion? Is that what?
can we say learning, let's say, can we say learning the Abhidhamma is cultivating wisdom and upholding vinaya is pure compassion? Maybe that's what it means, right? Like, that makes sense to me if I would put those is and does in there.
Okay. Um, I'm not an Abhidhamma scholar. I haven't uh, studied Abhidhamma. This has it in my background. A lot of people feel it is a higher wisdom. Vinaya, yeah, if we keep our sila well, then it is compassion. It is um, it's non-harming, and we're offering safety to other beings if we keep in even just 5 precepts. Uh, so that is a compassion act. I can't speak about the Abhidhamma since I'm not an Abhidhamma scholar, but some people really find a lot of benefit from it. So
Yeah, I would just say any kind of deep dive that you take into the Dhamma is definitely cultivating wisdom, you know? So no matter how you approach it, you're definitely cultivating wisdom. That's what the Dhamma is. And definitely practicing restraint is for the benefit of all beings, is compassionate. So yeah, definitely. Okay. Malini says, thanks to both of you. Wish you well. Then we have a question from Karuna over here. Bante, could you share more about your experience in Sri Lanka? Also, were formal exams required as part of your ordination? Yeah, so I only spent like a little over 2 weeks, I think, when I was in Sri Lanka. And it was just like mostly doing all the tourist stuff. And my trip there culminated in spending a day and a half, something like that, at the main center for my Nikaya, our fraternity, to do the Upasampada, because there they only ordain once a year right before the Vasa, the rains retreat. But throughout Sri Lanka, I mean, I felt like I was treated like royalty, like a prince everywhere I went. It was excessive at times. I felt like, oh wow, this is people are really going out of their way. So yeah, it was beautiful. Everyone was so nice. There's just Dhamma everywhere. Like you can hear chanting or Dhamma talks in Singhala, like on loudspeakers everywhere you go. People have it on their radio. People are watching it on TV. Like the Dhamma's in the air every single place. You can't escape it, which was beautiful.
Thailand's like that too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Loudspeakers and chanting. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the temple, I think because I'm a foreigner, everyone was going out of their way. Like I got a really nice room, Aya, with the air conditioning and all the other monks are like in this big like dorm room, like a barracks military bay with a bunch of beds. And they took me somewhere else, like where the local hamdras, where the big monks are at. And I stayed in one of those rooms, which is really nice with my own bathroom.
Maybe they were afraid you were going to die from the heat. That would look bad. The American dies.
Yeah. Actually, it was the mosquitoes were a bigger problem than the heat or the humidity. The mosquitoes, were a bigger problem. But there is the traditional Sri Lankan way, as I understand it, is you have to memorize the entire Dhammapada, and be able to recall it for you to get the Upasampada. You also have to. There is tests and exams, but they're not like for you to get the ordination. So there's this Pandita, the Raja Pandita test exam, which it's Abhidhamma, the Suttas, the Vinaya, Sanskrit, Pali, and you have to learn, and it's like an exam they give every year. And you can do it all at once. All three, it's broken down into 3 modules. You can do it all in 1 year, or you can do one each other year. And then like whoever scores the highest gets to meet with the president or prime minister, and they get an award for the highest scoring monk, and you get the title like Pandita. And if you score the highest, you get like the Raja Pandita. So there are a lot of exams and stuff like that, but it doesn't really have to do with like, as I understood it, with like getting the ordination. But I do know that they expect every monk to know the Dhammapada by memory to get the high ordination. Yeah, I got up to like 200 and something, and then,
Wow.
then it became too much. Okay, we got our friend Hyang Ewe again. Why is it important to live in the present moment to achieve spiritual progress?
Well, present moment is the only reality. The past is gone. It's just we reconstruct this idea of what happened. They show this even scientifically with studies and even with police reports where there's 5 witnesses and each person has a different story of what they saw, and they were all there at the same time. So the past is just kind of a reconstruction, even like what happened 10 minutes ago. And then the future is unknown. So the present moment is all we really actually know. The present moment is the only time we can really actually do anything. And so it's real time. The past, we can learn from our mistakes, certainly. But like I was saying, it's a reconstruction of what happened. We're very selective of what we remember. So that's why it's the only time we can actually do anything, really.
And then he has a follow-up. Why is it so difficult to live in the present moment to achieve spiritual progress? How do we constantly manage our mind to live in the present moment apart from mindfulness? What else can we do besides practicing sati to bring us to the present moment? Well, I mean, sati is the main mental factor, right? To that brings us to the present moment. But I think sometimes we limit sati to like on the cushion or formal training, and we have to realize that sati is something that can be developed in every single moment that we do. It's not some formal practice. It's an inherent quality of the mind that just needs the proper conditions to be there. So as soon as we stop, rushing towards things or moving away from things, sati will appear when we stop trying to entertain or fantasize or go somewhere else, retreat from this present moment. Sati will come with the presence of the necessary conditions. So for me, a lot about sati is just about just being present. Just think about like presentness and really paying attention to what's going on right now. It doesn't have to be so formal, but when eating, just eat and really taste the food and chew the food. And when walking, really walk and don't be distracted. And so it's just really giving yourself to what's happening, to what you're doing at this present moment, right? In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says, when a monk arranges his robe, he knows that he's arranging his robe. So it's very pragmatic. It's just kind of like Aya was saying earlier with daily tasks and what she used to do as a nurse, walking from one place to another. It's just whatever you're doing, just do that. Do what you're doing. Be aware of what you're doing and limit your mind to there instead of thinking about the future or the past. Like really focus on feeling your body right now, feeling the breath, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and all of these things.
Also, there's right effort too.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times what keeps us away from the present moment is some kind of obstructive thoughts. So to see an unwholesome thought arising and abandoning it, but that's also present moment. In the present moment, I'm remembering the past, right? In the present moment, I'm thinking about the future. So I see, okay, I'm aware that this thought is arising. And so how do I bring myself back to the present? I abandon the thought of the past or the future. And then I can bring the sati up again, bringing myself into what's actually happening. So, so if I think I'm lost in the past, but actually this is occurring in the present. Sometimes that helps me break through that. Okay, this is a fabrication. This is I'm reconstructing the past in the present moment, trying to remember what happened in the past, even though it seems like a vivid memory. So then you can cut through it that way, just saying, okay, or this imagining of the future is just imagination. But I'm imagining that right now. How can I awareness of the body, bringing your awareness to the body helps a lot. Sometimes what I do too, when I see myself getting lost in thoughts of the past or future, I can feel whatever contact my body is making with, like, right now I'm sitting on a cushion. I can feel the pressure of my body against that cushion, the gravity, exerting pressure, the weight of my body, exerting pressure against what's holding me up. Or if you're standing, you can feel your feet on the floor, whatever. The touch of the cloth against your skin, your clothing. Whatever you can do to bring yourself to the present. Sounds are really good for present moment awareness. So, yeah, it's hard to do it without the sati, but also the right effort helps. Abandoning what's useless, trying to bring up wholesome qualities. And one of those wholesome qualities is awareness.
We have a comment from Jojo. Just says, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Venerables. I will reflect on this and I hope to continue the momentum. Everything seems to be going in the right direction. Leaving my phone now. Bye. Okay. Then we have Gyana saying, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Jayatu, Buddha, Shosona, Shosona. May all beings be well and happy, be free from sorrow. Take care. Thank you for the gratitude, everyone. And some Anjalis and some other things here. Some homage to the Buddha. Rick says, yes, Bante, I contacted the sheriff and they suggested that a mouse will file a civil case. Yes, definitely. Good. Here we go. I think this one. What does it say? What are chants and practices as antidotes to cultivate gratitude? And during practice, when one encounters sudden intrusive thoughts in interacting with Sangha. So what are some practices that are antidotes to that help us cultivate gratitude, right? And how to deal with intrusive thoughts.
Cultivate gratitude. I don't know if there's particular chance to cultivate gratitude, but just reflecting on, because there is a tendency for us to be critical, so that is an important thing to cultivate, is a gratitude. As human beings, we're dependent on other beings, other people, for our very lives. And thinking about our parents or anyone who's our teachers who have done this wonderful, care for us to be in this world. Just reflecting on that. Do you have suggestions about the?
I mean, just rejoicing in our wholesome actions. So recall all the wholesome actions that you've done, like practicing generosity and helping others and being kind. And and just really focusing on your karma. And, to be born as a human, to be born in as a human in a safe place where you can do this and to be listening to the Dhamma. I mean, you've done so much good. You have so much punya, so much merit. So just rejoice in that merit, be happy and focus on all the merit you've made. Instead of being more critical and see where you're lacking. Sometimes we focus too much on the distance that we need to cover and we don't see all the distance that we've already covered in the past. So to get to this point where you're at right now, where you live a healthy human life in a safe, relatively safe place, most of us listening to the Dhamma and practicing the Dhamma, you're like at the peak. You're like 1% Buddhist, and you have the best conditions available. So you're doing really well, despite of what other things are going on. So focus on that. Focus on all your meritorious deeds that brought you to this moment, instead of like, well, I'm not a stream mentor, I don't have jhana, etc. Like, instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on what you do have, and those are your actions.
And then, that rejoicing, the gratitude is, I guess that's it is akin to rejoicing, but reflecting on to cultivate gratitude. I think it also would be supportive of the idea of non-self, that I am this interdependence. My life is impossible without the help of others, and my life wouldn't be here without, like the people that helped me in the past. So, but rejoicing in that too, rejoicing in that goodness, this opportunity we have. Yeah, that seems like a good.
Then there's the other part. It says, during practice, when one encounters sudden intrusive thoughts in interacting with Sangha. So do you mean like relational problems? Like maybe someone says something or does something that bothers you? I think that's what you mean with other Sangha members. To to me, what always helps me is that, everyone's trying their best. Everyone's here trying their best. And sometimes it's not about right or wrong. I mean, some of these things are very kind of like just people do things differently and communicate differently. So kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt. And if they're in the Sangha, I mean, they're really trying. So, kind of focusing on that aspect too. And, your thoughts are interpretations of a situation. They're not the reality itself. So you may want to kind of evaluate and discern those intrusive thoughts and see like, are these a direct representation of what that person is, or am I interpreting this in a different way, which kind of is making me be upset by them or get upset? So just remembering that all of our thoughts, all of our ideas, all of our memories are all interpretations of a reality. They're not the reality itself. So there's a possibility that we're interpreting things wrong, right? So when we come into contact with others and people do things or say things a certain way, maybe we're just not seeing it the way they're seeing it, right? And we're not seeing it clearly. So I always like to kind of give that space and kind of be in this doubt zone, right? This big doubt that they talk about, like in Zen. So that's usually what I try to do. And then we have Rick again here. I was considering the simile of the saw as a guide. I practice metta, compassion, and equanimity. I have done well at not engaging in unskillful speech and actions and mental activity. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good.
No, was he the one with the neighbor that's
No, the one. Yes. He was the one with the neighbor, and he said he has
Okay.
contacted the police.
Yeah, the simile of the saw is guarding ourselves against harming ourselves and others. But I think, yeah, I don't think the Lord Buddha meant that we should allow people to
Yeah.
come to us.
No. Yeah.
It's more that I mean, you can have a heart of loving kindness. This is a guard yourself against hatred towards this person, but don't allow yourself to be harmed by them. So you're harming yourself if you have hate, but you can act to protect yourself. And actually, if this person doesn't understand that he's violating a civil, you know, or he's breaking a law, then he needs to be corrected somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the simile of the saw says if you have hatred towards that person,
Mm-hmm.
and the Lord Buddha is talking to the monks too, and we have a much higher standard. But I mean, like, I wouldn't put myself in the position to allow the bandits to come if I knew I could if I could avoid it. That I would put myself into danger. Okay.
Luisa, how long each day should a lay person meditate to become enlightened, well as following precepts, listening to Dhamma to be a good Buddhist? I mean, it could be one moment, one breath. I remember a sutta where the Buddha just says reflecting on impermanence for one breath is good enough. Or it can be thousands and millions of kalpas. I think, as Aya was saying earlier, the important thing is that you have a daily practice, no matter the time.
Yeah, it's not like there's a magic formula. I read somewhere this description of this monk, and he had this incredible meditation schedule. He was meditating like, I think, it was 3 times a day for 6 hours or something like that. And he was like keeping track of all. And then there was another one, I think, that was just ticking off the time. And both of those monks went out of robes because there was just some idea that you just, it's not like if I put in this many hours, I'm going to get a bigger paycheck or something like that. Put in my time card, and, so quality rather than quantity. This is what one teacher told me was on retreat. And, because I have an aging body and I can't put in the hours that I used to be able to when I was younger. He said that more than once. Quality, not quantity. So in your lay life, really setting aside that time, and just it's a very special time for you, even if it's like 15 minutes a day or something like this, having a beautiful maybe corner of your, one of your rooms, or even some people have a special room in their house. When I was a layperson, I had a altar and a sitting cushion, and it's just a special place that this is where I do the meditation practice. And so you take it seriously.
So then we have here Sood, dear Venerables, if there is one thing a layperson can develop in one's life to make it worthwhile, what do you think it would be according to the Buddhist teaching?
I would say a heart of loving kindness.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I think that because it brings up joy, and you're a joy to be around. But fully developed metta can lead to full liberation of the heart. So if you're eliminating all hatred, also heart of metta overrides greed. So if you can really permeate your body with loving kindness, and at least to put the decrease the anger and greed that's we all naturally have as human beings. I think the promise is full liberation of heart with the loving kindness, but then there's the joy of it.
Yeah, and a good rebirth, so you'll be able to practice again. Here's a very
How long
good
did we
question.
go on this?
I think
till 9.
till 9. Yeah, if there's questions, we'll go all the way to 9.
Okay, great. All right, just was
So
checking.
HPD says, where and how can I start as a new Buddhist?
Where you are right now. I don't know where you are I'm assuming you're in the United States, or if you're in this area. It is good to have other people to practice with. It is encouraging if you can find, if you're close to here, you could come here on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah.
But they're online, you can probably find community to practice with.
I think community is the most important thing, because the Buddha said what he said about Kalyanamitas, right? They're the entire path. So I think finding a Sangha where they're virtually one person is probably the most important factor to get started, because they're going to guide you and they're going to show you the proper way to practice. And you kind of have that sense of security, someone that's looking over you and protecting you. But in my own practice really started with like reading the Dhammapada. So something like a little bit more accessible. That's a good place to start. Like I think in the Buddha's words from Bhikkhu Bodhi is a good place to start also. And now you have like just showing up here. I mean, you already started. You're already here online with us, so you've already started. You can continue doing this. We have I forget how many live streams there is in a week, but at least 6. So you could just tune into the live streams. So I mean, you've already started, so just continue kind of doing this. Okay, Scott says Rick. Oh, that's for Rick.
Okay, and he's answering. Why don't we keep going with the questions, because we'll.
Okay. Over here, there's another question over here. How about patience as that one quality, Venerables? Yes, kanti paramanta potitika.
Well, they're all wholesome qualities, I think, or supporting one another. And the development of the patients will help with the development of the metta bhavana. Ah, yeah, it's the highest austerity.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a supportive factor,
Mm-hmm.
and it's certainly an important quality, but it isn't. Well, like the Brahma Viharas can lead you all the way to full liberation of heart, and the Kanti can support a lot of other of the practices, like the Anapanasati or any of the other practices that can lead to full liberation of heart. Um, so, but it's certainly important. Like it's like Yoniso Manasikara is also extremely important. The careful attention or wise attention.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a number of supportive factors, but if we were just going to, and then like if I say metta bhavana, it's going to include a lot of other of these qualities that are supportive. We can't have, I don't think without patience you can fully develop the metta.
No,
But
you can't develop any of the qualities.
yeah,
It's really a foundation.
that's one of those foundational ones. So the Yoniso Manasikara would be for the wisdom, and the patience would be for that help you with the endurance, to the persistence, the uh, uh, yeah.
We have another question from Hai Ang. Is being a vegetarian or vegan diet a good method of achieving compassion, and does it help during med? I think it's a result of practicing compassion. You're putting the horse before the cart right there. So it's the other way around. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I think people naturally will, if they're meat eaters, and start to feel remorse for the harm of caused by the slaughter of other beings. For so, yeah, definitely. Um,
Because if you don't have that compassion and you just take up eating a vegetarian or vegan diet, then I mean, I could see someone easily doing that without developing any compassion or even loving kindness at all. It just becomes kind of like ritualized. It becomes like a ritual that you're just doing. The important thing is the intention behind it, right? What's the intention? Why are you doing? Just like in everything in life, what's the purpose of it? What's your intention? What are you trying to achieve? So if you do feel that that you do see that spark of compassion in you to live that kind of lifestyle and have that kind of diet, then it's great. And I would suggest to lean into it, because that would only further develop the compassion that you already have. But doing that in order to get compassion, I think it's then it just becomes like parroting we do sometimes, with like chanting when you don't understand it. You're just like saying all these words that don't mean anything to you. So you make this thing that can be very beautiful and compassionate action of being a vegetarian into just some sort of ritual that has no real meaning.
I think ceasing from killing any kind of living being. For me, I think as a kid it came naturally because I see insects, and I just took interest in them, and I didn't want to harm them. But I think if you, even like moving the insect outside, I can see that living being is afraid. I put a cup over it and catch it, and I'm carefully taking it outside, and it's buzzing around inside the cup or something like that. So just really paying attention to see that all living beings are afraid of harm, and they cherish their lives. Even though what may seem insignificant to a lot of people, like an insect, all beings cherish their lives. So I think that, and then the natural, like Bante was saying, response is not to harm. So we'll try to reduce the harm we cause in the world. And so vegetarian diet seems like a wise thing in that
Mhm.
respect. So
Karuna. Venerables, how could you share reflections on skillful reaction to someone of the spam comments we are seeing? Don't react. Yeah, I don't think there's any skillful reactions. There's skillful responses, but the best thing is not to react, not to perpetuate and feed uh, those kind of thoughts and spamming, and just show love and compassion towards them. So usually it's just when the Buddha was being also accused of fathering a child, right, with that young girl, he didn't say anything. He just stayed there, and people were criticizing him and insulting him and berating him. And Ananda suggested that they leave the town. And the Buddha said, so if they criticize us in the next town, we're going to leave again, and we're just going to keep running our entire lives. Yeah, we can't do that. He says 3 things can't be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. So yeah, I think just practicing patience and loving kindness is the best way to deal with what's going on right now in the comments. And then we have another one. Venerables, what does tapo mean? That means asceticism. Like tapas is still practiced to this day. These ascetic practices of uh, like picking your hairs out, or sitting outside and not laying down, or standing on one foot. You see to this day only now in India, or holding your arm up for the rest of your life and never bringing it down. Yeah.
So yeah, there's those extreme, and they were supposed to burn off bad or negative karma, but it was just creating more
More pain.
more pain and bad karma. So he was saying that patience, endurance was highest austerity, um, not tormenting ourselves. It's more the mind than
Mhm.
tormenting the body. It's the uh, um, yeah, and then knowing that things take time. To be patient is that it just, be willing to put in whatever amount of time it is to uproot the unwholesome and to develop the wholesome.
Now we have Sud again. Dear Venerables, as the Buddha mentioned that metta confers protection from calamities, or is this a later development to allow practitioners to start from the practice at least to motivate them? I mean, there is the sutta of the benefits, right? 7? Oh, how many is it? I forget.
There's 8, and there's
Yeah,
also 11.
8 and 11
And
benefits.
it's in the Anguttara Nikaya. And the protection from, it says, like fires and weapons and poisons and all these kind of things. And some people say, well, that may be figuratively. And other people say that actually it does. It is a protection. But I think there's also about animals.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a heart of loving kindness, I really sincerely believe this. I think when I'm out in the forest and I'm just doing the metta bhavana as I'm walking, I'm noticing the animals are less afraid of me. And I encountered a rattlesnake and mountain lions. And I think they're really more afraid of human beings than we're more harmful to them. But the one time I was encountering a rattlesnake suddenly, and we just were gazing into each other's eyes. And I was just like kind of admiring it, and it was not intimidated by me. And then it just went off into the it went into the grasses, and then I went, oh, that was a rattlesnake. I think I better be careful where I walk. But it wasn't. It was only until later. But I think, yeah, I don't know, because of our karma, it's not going to completely protect us from calamities. I think to a certain degree it can help, but just the collective karma of humanity, it's not going to stop that. But it says, it talks about a good rebirth, and then dying peacefully, and you sleep well, you wake up well. Spirits, non-human beings don't fear you, and they won't harm you. So, yeah, it's not a late calamities. I don't know particularly if it's poisons, fire.
Yeah, I don't know about calamities. I mean, that's what the Ratana Sutta does. You know, when the Buddha went there and he chanted the Ratana Sutta, the jewel discourse, because that there was a village or a town that was filled with all these kind of calamities, like I don't know, a plague, or there was some famine going on, and
There's famine, plague, and then hostile spirits and all
the
kinds
worst of the
things
worst
going on all at once.
Yeah. And then the Ratana Sutta is just reflecting on the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So for calamities, then we can think about, taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha would be the thing. That's what that sutta talks about: the greatness of the Buddha, the greatness of the Dhamma, and the greatness of the Sangha. How these precious jewels protect us.
I think, but the protecting of our heart and being able to also manage with things in the world. That's what we should really, because just doing it like a protective spell or something like that. It's not.
Okay. Barinas Sadhu, I wonder if it's appropriate or helpful to embarrass a student in a Sangha if teachers or experienced practitioners criticize me in front of others with their bodily. So not all criticism is bad. Some criticism can be very useful, especially if someone's doing something that's really hurtful, and you might have to be very direct with them. But if you feel it like it's more like hazing or emotional abuse, then that's definitely goes against Dhamma. But sometimes we don't like our flaws being pointed out to us, or our shortcomings, and that hurts us. And that's a real feeling, that feeling of hurt and feeling called out, exposed in front of everyone, where our shortcomings are at. But just because it hurts us doesn't necessarily mean that the intention of the other person was an evil intention, or an intention out of anger. They may have done it out of compassion. So this is these kind of situations are very nuanced, and you have to look at patterns, and and kind of get feedback from other people too that were there, and just kind of really. I don't think these kind of things are not as black and white as we think they are, as we experience them, as we feel them. It's not necessarily that our feelings are a natural interpretation, a natural reflection of reality, or what the other person was thinking when they told us that. Because my teacher is very direct with me, and many times it's hurt me. I'm like, oh, I feel hurt and wounded from that. But I saw his face, I remember his tone of voice and the subject that he was talking about. And after some time, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Maybe he was too direct, and I'm not ready for that kind of directness, but there was no malicious intention there. But sometimes our ego gets hurt, and we don't like to be embarrassed in front of others too. So that's another thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean, but I mean, there's a lot of nuance there. Just look at the pattern and feedback. Others will let you know if it was inappropriate too. Yeah. And things like that. I don't know, Aya, anything else?
Yeah. Since we don't know the circumstances and what happened and what was said, then it's hard to really know, but it can be skillful. I know, but like what Bhante was saying, that I think in our culture we're not used to people being so direct, and especially in public. And there's a thing about being embarrassed about it. But if we say, oh, this person was really pointing out something important, and that's more important than if people think I made a mistake or not. And it's just our ego that's wanting to be protected rather than learning from a situation. So yeah, it depends so much on what since it's I don't understand the context of it, but it can be somebody pointing out our faults is considered a treasure if we can learn from it. Like if I was acting inappropriately or said something that was foolish or whatever, and that was pointed out. And then I also could see my embarrassment as myself clinging.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so if we can learn from the situation, it's actually considered a treasure.
Rick has a very interesting question. Venerables, how do the 10 paramis relate to the 7 factors of awakening?
Well, were the 10 paramis, were they considered later?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, can you answer that one?
Well, the 10 paramis, from what I remember reading Bhante Analayo's book, is that they're a later addition, uh, uh, and kind of like the whole fleshing out of the story of the Bodhisattva is also kind of a little bit later, although you see glimpses of how he talks about previous Buddhas when they were Bodhisattvas and what they had to do. But it's really the way of the Bodhisattva, right? The developing of the 10 paramis, according to the tradition, is supposed to be for becoming a Sammasambuddha. So that's one way. And the 7 factors of enlightenment, I feel like, are for everyone. You don't have to be on the Bodhisattva path to only be a Sammasambuddha, but anyone trying to escape from samsara, whether Sotapanna all the way to Arahant, they develop these 7 factors of awakening, and so do the Sammasambuddhas, and I would think the Pacceka Buddhas. So I feel that the paramis it's a very niche practice, for these very unique individuals in samsara. And the 7 factors of awakening are like more universal or general for anyone trying to escape samsara. We have another interesting question here from Hey Ang. How do we recognize and deal with monks that do not uphold Vinaya? I mean, you don't have to associate with them. Just go to another temple where monks do uphold Vinaya. Right? That's the easiest thing, not to associate with the fools, but to associate with the wise. This is the highest blessing.
And also, it depends on the tradition, where some people will recite the Patimokkha, but their understanding is that they have particular rules that they are keeping well, but they don't see the need in this day and age to completely keep Vinaya well. So we have to be careful, because a person can be very if they're doing harm, their basic 8 or 5 precepts, they're breaking those, then I would stay away. But if they're like, we're really strict with money and we have all these different kind of rules that we keep that may seem really archaic. And so there are a lot of people who are in robes that aren't keeping them, but they're very generous with their time, and they're helping people, and they're educating people, and they're very honest. I've seen even in the Theravada tradition, monks that are really more engaged in the world. So they're driving and they're using money and they're doing all these things that if you were keeping Vinaya very strictly, you wouldn't do. But they have a purpose for it, because they're actually helping people in their community. They're doing amazing work. Mm-hmm. So I've met some of those monks, and I just have the deepest respect for them, because they're helping people that used to be refugees are now established in this culture, and they're now part of society. They're an active part of society because these monks have helped them. So we have to be really careful. about how we criticize people and really look at a bigger picture.
And look at our minds,
Yeah.
If you feel any anger or resentment towards them, then you need to be careful with that too. So especially when it comes to these smaller things, like like accepting donations, or maybe driving a car, or I don't know, these other kind of things. We don't want to be hypercritical and be like, oh, they're a bad monk, evil monk, But if that's not your cup of tea, then I mean, that's not your cup of tea. I mean,
Yeah.
but you definitely want to see your reaction to when that happens.
Yeah.
Are you giving into anger? Are you giving into hate? And if you're doing that, then you need to kind of really be aware of that, and not let it cross that threshold. Um, let's see. We have Dan. Regarding simile of the saw, is the Buddha teaching complete pacifism and non-contention in the face of evil? He may criticize someone in the Sangha practicing for Nibbana, but walk away from unwise always. So, as I understand that simile, that story, the Buddha is not encouraging us to put ourselves in those situations, like I was saying, to put ourselves in these difficult situations. And if we find ourselves in that situation, we just don't let ourselves get abused. I mean, you can walk away, you can try to get away, you can ask for help. Um, as far as pacifism, as I understand it, yes, because the Buddha never, ever uh, uh, allows people to be violent. There's no sutta that I've ever read or anywhere in the canon where the Buddha says it's okay, there's justified violence or justified anger. Uh, so that never happens. So, I mean, I don't know if, past the ideas of pacifism is a Western idea. It's not something that we find, so we're trying to move a Western concept into kind of an Indian kind of system. So this is not going to be a perfect fit, but we can say it's definitely anti-violence and anti-hatred all the time. That's what I think. Kaya?
The Lord Buddha in that simile was specifically talking about our state of mind with whatever is happening, whatever somebody says to us, however people are acting, that we have a heart of loving kindness. And that, but yeah, like we don't, and he was talking to the monks specifically too because of an incident.
It's this
Non yeah, but they also in other suttas he was attacked verbally, and he was very skillful on how he responded to him. He didn't allow himself to be insulted.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't allow himself to, yeah, I think, and if so the idea is that we ourselves do not act or speak violently. We're guarding ourselves against that kind of behavior. But I don't think we're not. He also says not to condone or to encourage violence.
Mm-hmm.
Encouraging other people to keep the precepts, encouraging other people to not harm.
There's a second part here to it. Is the Buddha a pacifist like Tolstoy? In your opinion, is he more like the Jains than we give credit for? I mean, I haven't read any Tolstoy. All I know is like things I've heard from other people or documentaries that I've watched, or other people talk about Tolstoy's perspective. But yeah, I always think that it's tricky comparing these different kind of two different worldviews or cultures when we try to get like Western ideas and try to fit it into like Indian ideas. It doesn't work perfectly. I think it's best to kind of capture each tradition within its own, its own system, or its own way of explaining things. I'll But we can just talk about like simple things like non-violence, non-hatred, non-greed, and Buddha is definitely for charity and helping others and encouraging others to help others and not do violence. So I think when we talk about it like this, you can come to a conclusion, right? Like, oh, pacifist. But I don't think in the strict like philosophical terms, it would fit exactly the mold of like whatever Western philosophy has to say that are the strict parameters of being a pacifist. I'm not sure if it would meet all those criteria.
And he's not. He's different from the Jains.
Yes,
He's not. He's really denounced a lot of what their practices were.
because they cause self-harm.
Yeah, they cause themselves harm. I mean, they do kind of a ritual like sweeping as they go walking along, so they're not harming insects. But the intention is the important thing. The awareness. If I'm aware that I walk in and I see insects, I'll be careful not to step on them. But if I actually accidentally step on an insect, then there's no karma in that. I definitely try to do what I can to prevent harm. But yeah, it's very different from the Jain's perspective.
Rick is just telling us thank you and thanking us for all the work that we do here
Okay,
at Empty Cloud. And Sood has a question.
we're getting towards the end.
Yeah, this probably be the last one, maybe.
Yeah.
Dear Venerables, any sort of aversion when it is present, does it mean that metta is not present in the mind during that time? There's actually a sutta that I recall right now where one venerable says, I have perfected metta and still I have aversion in my mind. And the other monk tells him, don't say that. It's not possible. It doesn't go with what the Buddha would say. It is not possible for one who has completely developed metta to have also aversion in the mind. So from that perspective, you can't have both metta and like anger or aversion present in the same moment. It's either the mind has metta or it has aversion. But I feel that we toggle very quickly between them sometimes, like you might go from one moment of metta to a moment of aversion, like in the blink of an eye or a lightning bolt strike. So it's kind of difficult to discern if you don't have the very clear seeing of what's going on in your mind. So it might appear like they're both there at the same time, but it's just they're fluctuating between one or the other really fast. And I think, yes, I think we reached the end. Aya, you have anything else to add? And then we'll call it a night.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, if you see aversion in the mind, then your awareness of that is a wholesome mental act. And then the ability to set it aside as soon as we could see the aversion rising. But like Bhante was saying, we go back and forth between different mental states pretty quickly. And to be able to maintain the metta for extended period of time is a skill that's developed over time. So it is important to see that aversion, to be aware of it and to recognize it. And then as soon as we are able to abandon it, that is great too. But to be patient with ourselves.
Yes.
Because we don't want to add aversion to aversion by saying, I shouldn't be averse.
Yes.
Yes. I should always have metta in my heart. This is expecting too much of ourselves. It's a practice that the Kanti is there. The Kanti comes in very important at this point when we see the aversion arising. But the recognition is wisdom. You were developing wisdom by recognizing it.
Yes. Well, it looks like we've come to the end. Thank you for joining us. But before we leave, I would like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos. Oh, there's hundreds of videos, I think, of all these live streams. And this is my part because, I'm not officially part of Buddhist Insights. I like to promote Buddhist Insights because I don't feel like self-indulging because it's not my temple. So please, please, please like all these videos. Every time you watch it, please like it. Please share it. Please comment like many of you are doing. And please, if you haven't already subscribed to Empty Cloud Buddhist Insights, please do so. Both on Facebook, both on YouTube, wherever you can find us, go to the page and promote us also on social media. There's the Buddhist Insights Empty Cloud. Instagram account. Please do all of that. Please share the teachings of the Buddha. There's many people who are interested. Like we saw today, we had one person who says, what do I do? I'm just new to Buddhism. So we can help those people by sharing these videos, right? They can learn. And so there's so many beautiful things that Empty Cloud does here and all the monastics do here. And by, liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting and doing all these things, you increase our probability, the algorithm, right? And that algorithm will feed other people and feed your algorithm too. So it shows you more Dhamma content. So let's leverage this technology. Let's leverage this platform for our benefit, right? And for the benefit of all beings. And that's my little soapbox promo for Buddhist Insights.
And we have
A lot of thank yous.
Loving kindness for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
All those who are paying attention to this right now.
Yes. Okay, well, that's it for tonight. And see you soon. May you be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Bye-bye.
Take care.